Hi, I'm Anthony Mangano, and welcome to City of Churches. Today we have a very unusual, different, but great episode of City of Churches, and that's why we're at our studios over here at 1712 10th Avenue. We're going to go inside and we're going to show you this episode. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. It's about a church that was almost demolished. Hi, and welcome to City of Churches. Today we're going to talk about a historic church that was originally built in 1861 during the Civil War, and later was almost demolished during the 1930s, and which is a subject of a short documentary film called Struck Down But Not Destroyed, by our very special guest that's sitting with us right now, Katie Breidenbach. Hiya, Katie.
Hi, Anthony.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Listen, before we go any further, I'm sure the viewers are going to look and they're going to say, we know her. Where do we know her from? So would you mind telling the viewers how they know who you are? Because some of them are going to get it.
Yes, I am a reporter with Currents, our news show, every evening at 7:30. I'm one of the one-man band reporters. I report, I edit, and I shoot all of my own reports. So you would have seen me on any given weeknight reporting for Currents.
See, that's amazing. Now you know where you know Katie from. And I've got to tell you, it's very strange sitting in Ed Wilkinson's chair here.
Absolutely. I won't tell him.
So, Katie, we're all very impressed with you and what you've done here at City of Churches. And I'd like for you to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I am not a New Yorker. I don't know if you can tell. I have learned the fast walk, though.
Okay.
I am from Ohio, a small town called Tiffin. It's in northwest Ohio. The nearest big city big quote-unquote city that you might have heard about is Toledo.
And how long have you been here?
About 4 years.
So how many people live in your hometown?
Close to 18,000 people.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, okay, the population of Park Slope here in Brooklyn, 65,000 people.
Wow.
So cut that down by about a third and you've got my hometown.
In a small community, you know people.
Absolutely.
So they must know everybody's business and a little,
Yes.
Now, what's your heritage?
My heritage, I'm German.
See, I'm part German. I know I don't look it. I make comments. I'm Italian, Polish, German.
All right, so we can be friends.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Why did you find it so important, Katie, to make this particular documentary?
Well, the church, my home parish is St. Joseph's Church.
Okay.
And it just has an incredible story, right? And I don't want to give away the entire documentary, but most people didn't know that story. It's fading away in memory because it was 8 decades ago. And I really didn't want that to happen. I didn't want that memory to fade into oblivion, because that would be almost worse than the church itself having been destroyed, because then we lose the legacy of the church, the reason that building stands today, and I didn't want that to happen.
How long did it take you?
It took about 6 months once I finally got down and started doing the interviews and started talking. The hardest thing was trying to find people to interview, people who remembered the church, people who remembered 1934, the infamous year for the parish.
So basically the ones that were able to did cooperate with you?
Absolutely.
How difficult was it for you to do this kind of research for over 80, for 80 years? You just said that it was a little hard to get people to interview, so you had to do some extensive research here, to go back and for 80 years ago.
Absolutely. And like I mentioned, it was 80 years ago. We're losing the people who remembered it.
Sure.
I found 4.
Wow.
4 people.
Out of your 18,000 in that?
Out of my 18,000, I found 4. And of course, as the documentary premiered, more stories sort of came up out of the woodwork. But I was able to find 4 people. And it was just basically through hearsay. Someone was like, well, so-and-so I think might remember it, or so-and-so's family had a drugstore on that street at the time. They might have been there. But these 4, they were, they're 90 years old now, so they were very small when this happened. Their memories were pretty foggy. So I had to go back to the Historical Society. The town actually has a historical society that's trying to preserve these memories. They had all the photographs, they had the newspaper accounts. The local newspaper was a huge help because I had the first-hand documentation of the fire and of everything that happened.
When did the film premiere?
It premiered on April 10th. which was the day before the 82nd anniversary of the fire of 1934.
Wow. And how was it received? How did the community, your 18,000 community, I don't know if they all attended, but word of mouth, hopefully, how did they respond to it?
By the end of the advertising, everyone did know about it, and everyone was so excited. They felt special. They felt noticed. They felt recognized. You know, they have always been proud of their church, but this gave them even more reason to be proud of it. I'm still getting feedback about that documentary and about the church. I just had a group of high schoolers post about this documentary, wanted to know how I did it, wanted to know more about it.
Well, you did everything,
yeah,
which is a big compliment. That's really great, Katie. You're watching City of Churches, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to City of Churches. We're sitting here with our special guest, Katie Breidenbach, who wrote, directed, and produced Struck Down But Not Destroyed in her hometown, Tiffin, Ohio. Katie, is there anything you'd like to add before we show the film?
Yeah, absolutely. You will see the film, you will see the story of a church that was taken down by a fire and then rebuilt through the sacrifice of parishioners. But keep in mind that this is only a small piece of the whole picture. There are many, many, many people who sacrificed in order to rebuild this church who will never know, the stories we'll never hear. I mean, gave their last penny in order to rebuild this church. So yes, be moved by the sacrifice of the parishioners here in this documentary, the ones that I will tell you about and that you will hear about in the documentary. But also keep in mind, it's only a small piece of the whole picture of everything that was done for St. Joseph Church.
Well, thank you, Katie, for adding that. That says a lot of what went on there. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here is Struck Down But Not Destroyed.
It was a mess. I mean, it was everything laying all over, you know.
There was a helplessness about it. The church is gone.
In 1831, in Tiffin, churches were just starting to get started. And the first of those churches was St. Mary's. By 1845, there was a movement among a number of denominations who had a large population of German people. They wanted to have a congregation that did the services in their own language. And in 1845, Tiffin St. Joseph's Parish was formed. In 1861, just as the Civil War was getting underway, they built this.
The church at that point in time was extremely grand. It was extremely decorated. There was a lot of arched, curved sections that went up that were supported by not so much support pillars, but more by decorative pillars. And all these had stripings on them. All of them had tapestries with biblical scenes in them.
The original church had a spire that was actually 180 feet tall. So it was the centerpiece, the most visible, the most imposing building in downtown Tiffin.
People thought a lot of their church. The pews were always full in church. Full. The people gravitate to their church. That's their family. That's their home.
Fire of 1934 was very devastating, not only physically to the building, but also to the parish. People were really fearful that the church would not be able to be rebuilt.
A major storm had crossed through in a town, and somewhere around, to the best of everyone's guess, maybe 1:30 in the morning, a lightning strike had hit the steeple. And somewhere or another, it caught something on fire and it smoldered.
Well, back then, Monsignor Hoken was the pastor. And you know who his best friends were? Those darn pigeons. And they think that's the reason when the lightning struck. Why, of course, there was a fire, but the pigeons had their nests up there, and that's what helped the fire go. It must have burnt 5-6 hours before anybody knew it.
The fire was well underway in the steeple. It was way up there where it was very difficult to reach. As much pouring of the water onto it, it was already had too much of a head start.
It did burn from the outside. It was all, seemed like it was burned from the inside. You see the outside there, it was fire on the inside. It was quite a scene for a little kid.
Father Schmelzer, he was one of the assistant pastors. He went over and got the Blessed Sacrament out of the tabernacle and took all the valuable things as much as he could.
Through the efforts of some area bystanders and the priests, and they were basically doing an assembly line of carrying things away and putting them in the priest house. But again, they had the fire breathing down their backs. It was quite literally rolling across the top of the ceiling. So these people were risking their lives.
When I went up, they wouldn't let us get too close to the church. But I can remember they were carrying a statue, I think it was of the Blessed Virgin, over to what we called the old building, and I'll never forget that.
The fire continued on. The firemen were inside the back of the church, but the fire chief fortunately had realized that he was seeing some structural issues that he felt that they better evacuate the church, and he did so, pulled the firemen back, and with quite literally minutes after that happened, the bells that were way up in the steeple began crashing down. And from everybody who was in that area, they said it was a horrific noise, the sound of the bells working their way down through the church and hitting the ground floor with all the other debris. When the steeple started to fall, people went running for their lives. It was so overwhelmingly tall that no one knew where it was going to go, how far out it was going to reach. So there was this large scream, people were fleeing the area.
I lived on Coast Street, and my brother was there, and I don't know how we heard, but I know we went up in our attic and opened the front window, and we couldn't see the steeple, so we knew it was gone.
They fell across the Millmore and Coast Street and was laying over towards Deringer's gas station, Deringer's, and it was an awful lot of tears. People crying. It was one of the family had died.
Just the four walls were standing, no roof. The roof was all down on top of the pews.
It was a mess. I mean, it was everything laying all over, you know. And my dad he came up every day with these horses and wagons, and they loaded it all up in there, and then took it out. He worked, I don't know how many days up there.
Everybody was trying to do everything they could. And I think the whole city of Tiffin helped them.
The next day after this happened, area churches were offering the use of their buildings for our services. Financial gifts were coming in immediately. The bishop had come down from Toledo and declared it will be rebuilt.
It was deep in the Depression. There were a lot of people who were on relief, who had nothing, bare bones, poor.
The people of St. Joseph needed to have their church rebuilt. In 5 weeks, they collected $50,000. Now in today's economy, $50,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but the entire project cost $200,000. So in a 5-week period, they collected a fourth of what they needed to completely rebuild the church. They were not giving excess money. They were giving what they needed to live on. That was how great their love and dedication was to the church.
Oh yeah, people in those days didn't have much of anything. You always thought of the church first.
This fundraiser and what it eventually raised crossed every religious boundary. Various churches, by name, donated money to help rebuild the church. The people of Tiffin, including way outside of the walls of this church, gathered together to rebuild this place.
You can't imagine how tragedy brings people together, and there was so much togetherness that these families all put our church back together, what we wanted.
The church was built, this grand church was built in the beginnings of a conflict of the Civil War, and then here we are rebuilding the church again in the conflict of a financial war. I mean, we couldn't have picked worse times sometimes to do these things, but it was a time that shows the grit of and the work ethic of our area.
A great sign of the dedication of people and the value that they placed upon the church building, that they wanted to do that, and we certainly are beneficiaries of that today. You know, that they had that care and concern, you know, to do that building.
The windows are the same. They saved the windows. And they did save the stations too. See, they were on the walls. And it's the same walls that are still there.
The marble and stone type statues were all removed and were basically just cleaned by a local mason, I believe. We had a company in town called Scenic Studios, and they were able, the tapestries that form the Stations of the Cross were basically removed, and they were sooty, but they were salvageable, and they were restored over there at the Scenic Studios.
Those are nice kind of remnants to hang on to as part of the legacy of the parish.
When the Israelites returned from Babylon and saw their temple in ruins, that was their first priority. They dedicated themselves to rebuilding the temple, and that was the first priority of the St. Joseph parishioners at this time, to rebuild the church. That was their first priority.
We think the world and all of our church. Well, we're happy to just belong to it.
They've handed on the appreciation that God is important in our lives. And the significant building that was built here in Tiffin said, you know, we're here to stay. The church is very prominent in our community, hopefully not just as a building, but as a presence of Christ and the work that we're trying to do.
You're watching City of Churches. We'll be right back. Well, we're back. I hope you guys enjoyed that because it was very special. You did a great job.
Thank you.
You really did. And to achieve something like that is amazing. You know, hats off to you.
Thank
you
you
did
so
you really did a
much.
great job, and I hope our viewers really enjoyed that. And at this particular point in our show, we'd like to talk about a special artifact or relic from the church. Is there anyone that you'd like to talk about or want to let the viewers know?
Without a doubt, it would be the Stations of the Cross, the paintings along both sides of the building. Those are original. Those are from 1861. They were painted by Joseph Fitter, who was an Austrian immigrant. He's known as the Rembrandt of America. So those are incredibly valuable. Those are incredibly precious. And remember, the whole building went up in flames. It's a miracle that those Stations of the Cross are still there. And when you look at them, the emotions of the people, the lighting, they're just gorgeous. We are so blessed that they are still there. The other artifact would be the stained glass windows. These ones in this church, they are also from 1861. They were preserved despite the roof caving in. There were very few that were even damaged when the roof came down. And the heat didn't even melt the lead from the windows. And they're so vivid, and it's, again, a treasure, an artifact. That's what I wanted to inspire, not only in the viewers, but also in the community. Treasure these artifacts. It's a miracle that we still have the building and that we still have these pieces today.
I want to thank you very much because what you did here was amazing. You did a great job, and I'm sure our viewers enjoyed this very much. And if you guys have any questions out there about this specific episode that Katie Breidenbach directed and produced and wrote in her hometown, Tiffin, Ohio, you could write into us at 1712 10th Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11215. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter or our website at www.netnewyork.tv. And until next time, I'm Anthony Mangano. Thank you for watching, and God bless you. Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was great. You did a great job.